Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Appeasement is always a sign of weakness. Europe cannot afford to be weak. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk declared as Europe awaits President Trump's arrival at the World Economic Forum in Davos, with the U.S. President promoting an expansionist foreign policy that is straining the transatlantic alliance. European leaders are trying to adapt, with some calling the upheaval in the global order as a catalyst for renewal rather than collapse. And now to discuss this further and what could develop next as global leaders gather for the third day in the Swiss Alps, we're joined by Garvan Walshe, CEO, Article 7, Intelligence for Democrats. Good to have you back on TVP World.
Thank you and good morning.
There's a lot to uncover, but I want to start with that quote in particular from Donald Tusk. And it goes on and he says, Europe cannot afford to be weak, neither against its enemies nor ally, and about European assertiveness, self-confidence. Do you find that what's happening now, will Europe find that confidence? Will it find it, and what will that look like?
I mean, Europe doesn't really have a choice. It has to find that confidence, because otherwise Donald Trump is simply going to try and roll over us. The good news is that we have allies in the United States beyond Donald Trump. We have a lot of strength and domestic capacity, and we now need a policy that reflects our real strength and our capacity and continues to defend our interests and the interests of a world based on international law, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. These are things that Trump seems to have decided to completely throw by the wayside with his aggressive and expansionist desires for Greenland. And it's absolutely right that Europe needs to find ways with our allies in the United States beyond the Trump administration to stand up to these expansionist demands that would only bring about the destruction of the transatlantic alliance and permanent weakening of America.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's hope that there will be those outside of the administration, as you said, that are going to be listening to reason. But at the same time, yet, despite some Republicans going against all this, it's still very much Trump's game in all this. So for the time being, Europe and the world has to deal with it. Let's talk about that European angle right now. I mean, there is an array of unity at the moment, but at the same time, if we're looking at Ursula von der Leyen, also her statement yesterday, calling on seismic shift, saying this is an opportunity to do more together, a necessity to build a new form of European independence. I mean, what does that mean precisely, and do we have that unity on a European level, really, if we look at some of the countries that are within the bloc?
I mean, the biggest thing we need to do is learn to be able to act quickly. There are powerful instruments like this anti-coercion instrument that's been talked about, but it's very slow. It will take some months to really warm up and be able to be used. We need to be able to take decisions by majority across Europe. Hungary and Czechia decided to veto a statement on Greenland, for example, so it has to be issued by fewer member states. We really need to move to qualified majority voting on foreign policy issues, even if it can't be done formally within the existing structures because the vetoes from Hungary will stop the vetoing being removed. We can start doing this informally. We can start allocating more money. We can start acting even as coalitions of the willing. We're seeing this already with Greenland. We're seeing European countries deploying military assets to Greenland. We're seeing France talk about deploying naval assets to the North Atlantic. There are plenty of instruments that Europe has. The important thing here is not to be able to fight the United States. It's to be able to present an argument in Washington that this is not worth doing.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, President Trump does continue, seems to be doubling down on his threats. He just said that at that press conference at the White House yesterday before he left for Davos. One of the things about the questions of Greenland came up, of course, and he said that you'll find out. What do you, I mean, we're speculating here, he's going to be on the ground in Davos soon, but what do you think that's going to be? You'll find out. He's got many meetings ahead with many European leaders. How is this going to look like in 24 hours or even 12 hours?
Well, this is the Trump way. He likes to make threats. He thinks that he can use all his power to extort anything from everybody else, and he miscalculates because he misconstrues reasonableness as weakness. And this is where the EU needs to learn to change its style of communication. It talks about de-escalation. It talks about moderation. These are an important part of the communication tactics, but they need to add to it a certain level of unpredictability, a certain level of defensiveness, so that he can see that, hey, we're not as entirely predictable as you want. We're actually pissed off about this, and we're willing to stand up for ourselves. Getting this balance right is difficult, but I think there have been remarks by Macron, there have been remarks by Tusk, increasing the emphasis of this kind of communication, reducing the sort of technocratic language a bit, should help get the message across that we're not willing to actually accept any of this, that changing borders without the consent of the people who live in an area is just completely unacceptable. We won't tolerate it, and we will ensure it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean, the message, the rhetoric is there. Also, again, back to Ursula von der Leyen, head of the Commission, saying again, like, Europe's response needs to be unflinching, united and proportional. But if we look also, what's interesting to me is we've had Belgium's premier, also the Prime Minister, who said, I'm quoting here, that we must go even further. Europe risks more. We shouldn't become U.S. slaves. I mean, this is the same Prime Minister, well, we couldn't even get access to a Russian asset. So, I mean, I'm just saying, how united really are we in practice when we have to do something in the face of this next crisis? Or is it going to be more of these statements, or will this really be action?
I think Ursula von der Leyen should have stopped by dropping the language about proportional. We need to be steadfast, we need to be strong. But talk about proportionality is exactly the kind of signal that causes Trump to think that we are weak. The Belgian Prime Minister, well, I'm glad he's come around to a more robust position. I suppose he's compensating for his previous weakness here. We've got to welcome that progress. In the end, we need a decision-making process that doesn't mean everybody has to agree. There has to be some sort of majority action here across Europe. That's what will give us the speed. Our biggest problem actually is the ability to make decisions quickly. And sometimes we try too hard to get universal consensus instead of acting fast. When you've got someone like President Trump, who likes to act at the speed of social media and not the speed of a bureaucracy, you need quick responses. And we need to develop the ability to act fast, to explain to people in his administration that his policies will lead to disaster, and do so credibly. I don't know if there's much hope explaining to him particularly. He seems to have just completely gone off the deep end yesterday. I mean, we've got serious worries about his mental health at this stage. The question is really whether the people around him understand that they're leading their country to disaster.
All right. Also, one big question, one big player in all this. We heard a bit from one of the vice premiers yesterday of China. Some of the quotes here, interesting ones that world leaders, especially also Europeans, will be analyzing and thinking about. And he basically went on to say that the world is a giant ship. We should not return to the law of the jungle. But at the same time, are we not already pretty much there with what Trump has been doing these last months? But China's response also that it wants to be not just the world's factory, it wants to be the world's market. How do we interpret China's role in this? What is their play going to be in these next hours and days and weeks?
Look, I'm sure China is delighted at this split in the democratic world. I think this is the best news for China in a long time. Donald Trump is fracturing the Western alliance. China is looking on and watching us fight each other. It's disastrous for us. It's very positive for Beijing. I mean, we're moving to an era, as a Canadian Prime Minister said, of kind of competing great powers. I think the question there is whether Europe, together with Canada, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Australia, can actually act as essentially a great power of its own, or whether it's left to be picked over by the other great powers, the Trumpian United States and China.
Mm-hmm. But it's also kind of interesting because you've had the European Union and certain European countries who have a very different policy. There's no united policy towards China. We have China now stepping in as trying to appear as a reliable partner. Is that something Europeans, the EU, certain countries in Europe will reconsider? I mean, there have already been some tougher showdowns between European countries and China. Is this going to now be recalibrated, or is this something else?
Well, you know, if you had the each individual of the 50 American states have a China policy, I'm sure they'd have different China policies too. What we need is to be able to have processes that allow us to make collective decisions and deal with China as an equal. Each individual European state is, of course, smaller. The European Union is about the same size, and then we can negotiate with China and understand how to work out this world of great powers as one of those great powers, not as something that they can pick off. And this means that we need more coordination. It means that countries like Orban's Hungary that continue to have a special arrangement with China cease to do so. We need to start being unified in our action on the world stage.
Mm-hmm. But I want to challenge you on that, because you said, I mean, if those different states in the U.S. could have a different China policy, they would, but they cannot because it's one unified federal system. That's not what we have in Europe. So I just want to go into more on that. Is that your, let's say, view that in order for us to solve this, we need more of a federal Europe in all this? Can we continue in this way of what the European Union is now?
Yeah, we need to change things. The last time we made these rules for Europe, it was 2007. It was a very, very different world. We now need more. You call it federalism, call it centralization, call it common decision making, whatever you want to call it. We need to be able to take decisions as a community of 550 million people quickly. We need people to accept that sometimes they're going to be outvoted, but in the end, it's worth it because our common security is stronger.
Mm-hmm. I want to come back really briefly to your comment as well. You mentioned the Canadian Prime Minister Carney, and he also said interesting things at Davos, saying if we're not at the table, we're on the menu, calling out to middle powers. So what do you think that's going to be digested by European leaders, also namely if we're looking at Poland, for instance? What's the message there? Will there be now more coordination with Canada in all this? How do we analyze that, just briefly before we close?
Yeah, there should be more coordination, and it should be done at an EU level. It shouldn't just be, of course, Poland should coordinate with Canada, but everybody in the EU should coordinate with Canada. We should be in a position to lead this middle power alliance. We shouldn't be in a position where individual member states are middle powers. We've spent 70 years building up all these structures. Let's expand them, let's develop them, and let's make sure that we have a coherent alliance that is based on long-term institutional trust and structures, not based on individual friendship with individual leaders. I mean, Poland can't survive if it just relies on individual friendship with individual leaders. We've seen how unreliable Trump has been. The lesson is we've got to all get together, build institutions as democratic countries, and therefore be able to exercise power on the world stage, because it's a dangerous world, it's a nasty world, and that's how we're going to be able to protect ourselves and secure our interests and freedom.
All right, so much to analyze as the world awaits Donald Trump's arrival in Davos today on Wednesday. Look, thanks so much for all that. Really appreciate your insights as always. That was our guest here, Garvan Walshe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.